Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. We are back here discussing Manchester City's win at the weekend. We've got transfers to discuss. We've got Super Cups to discuss. And I am joined by your chief Manchester Evening News writer, Simon Bajkowski. Simon, how you doing, mate? You all right? Yeah, good, mate. We were just talking about Turf Moor off air there because on the last podcast when we were in person, you were just discussing your love for that part of the world. Just tell the viewers how your experience was. Was it good? Good little experience down there?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, from the sort of minute I got out and parked at the cricket club, and there were three kind of knockoff trophies for fans to have their picture taken with to make a bit of money. Yeah, it was nice to have them back in the Premier League, and I just hope Craig Pawson made it out of there alive, because after sending a Burnley player off towards the end of the game, he was not a popular figure. I think he might have had to sort of be smuggled out in a traitor's cloak or something.
Yeah, it felt quite, I don't know about the game. I mean, I know there's not that much distance between the sides geographically, I will emphasize geographically. But it did, I don't know if it was because it was the first game of the season, but it did feel the atmosphere was slightly hostile coming from Burnley's end, wasn't it? It's a strange one.
Yeah. I mean, shouting Usoft something or other at Rico Lewis after someone's thrown a lighter at his head is quite I don't know. It's a particular sort of. I think you get it particularly in Lancashire and Yorkshire, where fans just like support their clubs no matter what, and every decision that goes for them is the right one, and every decision that goes against them is the wrong one. So yeah, it can be quite hostile to play in, which is good, and Burnley will look to pick up a lot of points at home as they've done previously. So it was a tough night for City.
Yeah, I can reveal on this podcast probably for the second or third time that I am a Leeds United fan, because I'm saying this because our other co-host as well, Dan Murphy, used to come on here and discuss him being a Bolton fan, and I can definitely agree with that statement that when you come to these Yorkshire and Lancashire teams, it can get quite hostile. Well, I do remember Jack Grealish coming to Ellen Road and getting a few harsh words said to him.
Who was the Leeds player a few years ago? It was either Ayling or Dallas at Ellen Road, who was like really, really late on a tackle and got a red card. And
I think it was Stuart Dallas. Yeah.
And the reaction from the crowd was insane. It's that kind of thing. Huddersfield again was another one where it's very much like that.
Oh, Simon, you're not putting us in the same bracket as that one. Yeah, we'll move on swiftly from
that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about City, obviously, in just a second. But obviously, the first calendar weekend of football, I watched the only real game, obviously, aside from City, I watched was the Chelsea-Liverpool game. I thought it was a brilliant game, but I don't know if you managed to catch any. Were there any sort of standouts for you? Obviously, Brighton battering Luton with a couple of comical goals thrown in there by Luton. Again, the comical defending, I should say, taking advantage of by Brighton. Don't know if you saw those ones, but yeah, it was an interesting first weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. I thought Brighton looked very good, and so many attacking options. Like when you've got kind of Enciso and Ferguson to come off the bench, it's like, wow, that looks pretty good. And obviously they were very good last season, and we'll look to build it again. I quite liked the look of Tottenham. I know they didn't win. They've lost Harry Kane, but I kind of like what their new manager is trying to do, and I don't necessarily know how good they'll be results-wise this season. But I think if you're a Tottenham fan, there was plenty to like, and James Maddison starting well with his new team. Newcastle were the other kind of really big team that caught my eye. Because Emery's Villa were really good last season, obviously, and it's not easy going to St James's Park. It's another big atmosphere, but 5-1 and like Harvey Barnes coming off the bench and scoring on his first appearance there, they look very good. I feel like people maybe haven't written off Newcastle, but sort of thought, they'll struggle to do what they did last year, and maybe they will. But it was a very, very confident start from them.
Yeah, I think there was that Summer Series tournament, wasn't there, in the States where Chelsea won it, but Villa looked very, very good. I think they drew actually with Newcastle out there.
They drew 3-3. Yeah.
And Emery's, you sort of see with Emery's sides that they're so militant when it comes to defensive organisation, and for Newcastle to just blow them up. And obviously Sandro Tonali scoring as well. So it's I think it's going to be interesting with Newcastle, because obviously with European football now, the depth is going to be tested. And obviously, you know, it might come to bite them in the end. But yeah, I think I'm similar with you, really. I think after watching extended highlights, not watching the games, but it did look like Newcastle were extremely good. And as I say, Brighton looked very good as well. So definitely one to keep tabs on. But we're not here to talk about all those other teams. We're here to talk about Manchester City, of course, who kicked off the season with a 3-0 win. Si, before we get into the intricacies of the performance, what are your general thoughts on City's win?
I thought it was very good. It will go down as kind of a bog standard win against a newly promoted team, but there was lots in there that made it more difficult than it looks on paper. And losing Kevin De Bruyne after 23 minutes was a big blow that City had to come back from. So lots of positives from the opening night. I think sort of pre-season was generally positive, but there were still a few concerns, and I think a few of those concerns were ironed out on Friday. So yeah, a decent start from the champions, really.
You having Haaland for 52 again? Is he going to extend that? I mean, it's just you're looking at him, and I mean, we've said this so many times, but he is just that robotic finisher, and obviously had a tiny bit of a slump towards the back end of last season. Slump, we will say. But by his standards, he's just setting off again, isn't he? And that goal, obviously, just the ball played into the box and just the instant reaction to get there ahead of the Burnley defenders. It just shows why you're probably thinking to yourself, he's going to be that poignant again. You know, he's going to be that productive in the final third. And you just, I mean, even your player ratings and your analysis after the match, you're almost in awe of what he is as a striker and just a general football player, really.
Yeah, I saw that Burnley goalkeeper James Trafford had left Haaland out of his fantasy team and kept himself in. That's confidence.
It's a rookie error. It's a rookie error.
Yeah, I mean, it was 3 minutes on the clock, and he slots it in, and the second one was just a superb finish. And you just kind of look at him, and yeah, he looks so sharp, and he looks like he will just continue to deliver. And there were a few more chances where he could have, he almost sneaked in for that hat trick before he got took off in the final third of the game. So yeah, he was a big plus, because I wouldn't say him kind of not scoring in pre-season was an issue, but like against Arsenal, I think his expected goals was 0.0. So nobody found him with the chance to score, which is an issue, because although kind of City worked out a way to find him in the second half of last season, I think it's always going to come back, and teams are always going to try and find a way to stop that service to him. And so the fact that City were able to find him free in the box was sort of definitely an improvement on Arsenal.
Yeah, he spoke after the game as well. He was obviously speaking to the Sky Sports cameras, and I think one thing that stands out for me when you're listening to him is it's obviously not only his like almost robotic footballing ability, it's his mindset, which is just nothing seems to faze him whatsoever. You know, he goes into every single game, and he was discussing blocking out negativity and having that strong mental focus to be able to go in every single game knowing the objective. And he was almost saying that Guardiola's honed in on that, but he has a natural sort of ability to be able to do that. And that's the psychological aspect in that is massive, isn't it? Because it's like it doesn't seem right now that he's put off by anything. He just knows the objective at the start of every game to score X amount of goals, and he believes in himself so much that that objective will be met. Yeah,
I know. I spoke to someone who knows him recently who described I think they described it as like a laser focus, and he just does have that pinpoint accuracy on what he's going to do, and that's why he can just kind of laugh it off when he does miss a chance. But he, like you say, he's just so self-confident in knowing that if he gets the chances, he will score the goals. And with the crowd at Burnley, you know, that goal kind of deflated them pretty early on, and obviously they worked their way back into the game. And Burnley on the pitch were very good in that first half. But that ability to score a goal from your first chance is just so important in kind of taking control of games.
Yeah, and I think Manu Akanji spoke on it as well. He was speaking about the motivation, and there's an article on the MEN, I think by yourself side, discussing it, and he believes at this moment in time that City have got more of it in terms of motivation, and after the treble win, people find that confusing. And as almost like a bystander and someone who talks on City as well, I do find it difficult and to understand how you can almost get that motivation to go again. You know, we don't like mentioning the other side of Manchester, but after their 99 campaign, Gary Neville's spoken about it before, about how it was so difficult to reach that level again. And, you know, with Akanji speaking on that, do you believe that? Do you believe that they have that mentality where they feel that they've got that extra motivation to go again at this moment in time?
I think they do. I think going off the very early signs, it looks like they have it. We'll wait and see what happens when like the first kind of problems arise. But certainly say 2019, after they'd won back-to-back titles, that summer, they didn't look organised. They didn't look like their heads were in the game. And they actually had like a load of players sort of in pre-season, which is unusual for them, but there was no major tournament. But they just didn't look like they had that elusive element that had won back-to-back titles, whereas so far what we've seen from pre-season and from Burnley is that, yeah, this team are bang on it, and they weren't kind of anywhere near perfect against Burnley, but they had enough to get the win, but they also kind of had that effort that is exactly what you need, and that kind of determination to see themselves over the line and hang in the game when they weren't at the best and when they were stretched. So, you know, it is going to... I feel like if they win the league this year, we'll say, oh, yeah, they've got that motivation. If they don't, we'll say, they never had it. But, you know, so that 1920 season, we saw the cracks emerging when they had a few setbacks, when they had a draw and a defeat and whatever. So we'll wait and see on that. But the signs so far are really good.
You wonder if it's competition for places as well, don't you? I think there's a difference in those two sides. Obviously, there was still quality in that in the previous side that you were just alluding to, but it feels right now, you know, for example, in the central midfield spot, you know, there's always players chomping at the bit to get in there as well, which surely would make that starting 11, you know, constantly think about elevating their game, you know, going away in the off season and doing extra bits. So it's like, that is my place, because Pep can just change it whenever he wants. And I think that's got to be an extra motivation as well for them to go to that next level, you'd expect.
Yeah. And even the sight of like Jack Grealish doing shuttle runs out on the pitch while we were in the press conference, and there were some players already getting on the bus. You know, he's not doing that out the goodness of his heart. He's out there with a conditioning coach. But that is kind of, you know, a sign of a player who wants to get back in the team and wants to do everything he can. And, you know, City, a lot of kind of City's success is in the unglamorous parts of the job, and doing shuttle runs at Burnley at 11:30 after you've not played is one of those things. So yeah,
the perfect nightcap.
Yeah. You know, and I mentioned setbacks, and maybe De Bruyne's injury will be that, and maybe that sort of lessens competition for attacking midfield, and it's more on the players who are fit to sort of fill in and step up, or maybe they sign another attacking midfielder and the competition for places only increases.
You've absolutely perfectly segued me into that. Well, you didn't even know, did you? You didn't even know. That's fantastic. I was just about to move on. I just thought, is Simon going to link it here? And he has done perfectly without even knowing. So Kevin De Bruyne, you spoke about it a little bit earlier on. 20 minutes in, hobbled off, and obviously no confirmation yet with how long he's going to be out. Didn't look good, did it, Si?
It didn't look good, and more than that, it didn't sound good from Pep. You know, it's
similar injury. It felt like, didn't it, to what
the Champions League final? Yeah. So it's always a worry when a player kind of just stops in a game and says, "I need to come off." And that's what De Bruyne did, and you know it was a pretty sorry walk off the pitch for him. You can understand why. It's his first start since Istanbul when he had to come off, and he's come off with the same injury again. And Guardiola afterwards was kind of expecting him to be out for a while. Now he isn't a doctor, and his diagnoses are often a bit wild, but he was kind of talking about his injury in the same bracket as the 2017-18 season, I think, or the 18-19 season when he did his ligaments and City were out without him for kind of 6 months. Now, I don't think it would be that long at all, but we could be looking at months rather than weeks that he's out. And especially there will be Pep was asked after the game, like, did you bring him back too soon? And it is a fair question, because he's talked about coming back early. He was only meant to be back for the Super Cup. Now, Pep said, well, if it had happened after 60, 65 minutes, then I would more think it is fatigue at the muscle, but it's something else if it's just gone after 20 minutes. But if you've had two injuries in the same place sort of consecutively, then there is going to be more concern and more sort of caution about bringing you back that second time. So, yeah, it looks like City will be out without De Bruyne for months. Scan on Monday, and I'm sure there will be news on Tuesday in the press conference, if not before, of how long City are without him.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it in part two, about the fillers really, and that sounds a bit redundant because it's coming into Kevin De Bruyne's position, but it's aiding. This is making a real generalisation here, but you mentioned on the last pod that it might be a slow start. It might not be. It's obviously been quite a quick start for City already, but Kevin De Bruyne is such a massive cog, Si, and we realised that last season, didn't we? He's such a massive cog that for a prolonged period of time, him being out it's naturally going to hamper City a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny really, because I'd seen sort of loads this past week about how injury prone he is and how he can't be relied upon in sort of the context of City going for another midfielder. And I was thinking, well, like, hang on a minute, he's had one bad injury, sort of Istanbul and over summer. But just because of his age, it's not like this guy's like injury prone now. And then Burnley happens, and it's one of those things. So quite glad that I didn't go all out and sort of say that De Bruyne would never get injured again. But yeah, nobody can do what he can do, and it was his kind of cross for the first goal that set City on their way. And he will be a huge miss. City have, they've managed without him before, and even parts of last season he didn't get in the team when he was fit. But around kind of that time, February, was when people started to kind of write him off, and then he responded in such emphatic fashion to remind people why they do count on him so much when he's fit. So, I think first and foremost, everyone wishes that, his recovery is good, and then City can think about getting him back in the team.
You wonder if there's going to be a rousing Pep Guardiola message this time when De Bruyne comes back, like last season. But two other issues as well, Si, which I will say, and I don't know if you've signed up for fantasy football this year, but I have, and it's absolutely battered my fantasy football team already. John Stones and Ruben Diaz.
Did you have both in your team or just one?
I had all three.
You had all three? Oh, no.
I had Diaz, Stones and Kevin De Bruyne. I just looked at my phone. Looked at my phone at about, what was it, 9:45? I thought, just no point. This is why I pay no interest to it after week 2. There's no point.
No, I'd taken Stones out this week.
Really?
Lost my nerve on him and then got lucky. But yeah, so Stones is out with a hip issue that isn't thought to be that serious, but will likely rule him out of the Super Cup squad. They're travelling on Monday afternoon, I think, so that should be fairly apparent by the end of Monday. And Ruben Dias, concussion, basically Friday training that happened. So under the concussion rules for this season, he has to sit out for 7 days. So I mean, it's looking like he's out. He's definitely out for Tuesday, and then he won't have had many training sessions before Saturday's game with Newcastle. Not that the team will train that much between the Super Cup and Newcastle, but yeah, Stones is out and Dias is out as well. But both kind of pretty minor. Both could be fit for Saturday against Newcastle, but we wait and see. But a kind of sign of the times that you can have Stones and Dias missing and still not need to start Gvardiol or Laporte in your team.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, there's so many options, isn't there? Even at the back. I mean, even somebody you probably wouldn't think of is like Rodri. Obviously, he does it for Spain, doesn't he? But you'd obviously be taking him out of that position where, we'll get onto it in a little bit, but where he was just ridiculous the other day. But going forward, who would be your, let's say hypothetically, because football is pretty much hypothetical, 80% of the time anyway. Who would you go with, Si, if they are both out? Who would be your centre-back partnership for the Super Cup? Well, they are going to be out for that, but for the Newcastle game, let's say as well.
I think it would be Akanji and then Ake or Gvardiol. I sort of shrugged there, not because there's like no options, but just because you kind of Ake or Gvardiol are probably best playing as that kind of fullback going forward, presuming that Walker's on the right, and so Akanji can do it as well and has done it before. But Ake and Gvardiol are probably a bit more progressive than Akanji is maybe, and Akanji's kind of more secure as a centre back. But the point is that City are blessed with options, having spent a lot of money on centre backs, but spent a lot of money.
Definitely, 100%. Well, we're going to leave it there for Act 1, everybody. Stick around for Act 2 as we speak about potential replacements for Kevin De Bruyne and the Super Cup going forward. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. We're here talking everything City, as always, every Monday and every Thursday, Friday as well. So make sure you tune in, leaving us a 5-star rating, and of course, commenting on our YouTube videos. We really appreciate it and read every comment. Okay, so we spoke in the first part, Si, obviously about Kevin De Bruyne, which was the major news. We spoke in the studio, I think it was last Monday, wasn't it, about, a certain individual coming to the party and really taking his chance this season. And that obviously was Phil Foden. Is this now almost, one person's adversity is another's opportunity?
Yeah, potentially. I think with Foden coming inside, kind of one of the concerns that people would still have about Foden inside is that Foden and De Bruyne inside together is kind of too much aggression and maybe not enough caution helping Rodri out as a 3. You maybe don't give your defence enough protection, so and you're going to play De Bruyne when fit. However, if Foden can be the De Bruyne role, if De Bruyne is unfortunately injured as he is, then that is more kind of takes away those concerns. But City are also still in the market for Paqueta at West Ham, who would probably expect to play centrally if he came in. So you sort of think if he came in, then Foden and Bernardo would expect to play wider, and if they signed Doku instead, then he would play wide, and Foden and Bernardo would be more use in the middle. So it's very much kind of numerous plates spinning for City at the moment in the transfer market. They still haven't worked out how to replace Mahrez, and they still haven't worked out how to sort of deal with De Bruyne's injury, and sort of will only really know when they know how long De Bruyne is out for. But yeah, lots of plates spinning.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be a real vote of confidence, especially with, like you just said, the plate spinning for Guardiola to almost go, there you go, Phil. This is yours now. You know, it's yours to lose. Yeah,
it would. But at the same time, they kind of have to think about bodies in the squad. You know, as much as like numbers are arbitrary, they can't have too small a squad just with the numbers. They've already got 3 injuries, and they kind of need to make decisions on James McAtee, Cole Palmer, Oscar Bob, those kind of fringe players. Like, have they shown enough to be counted as a player that could come into the middle for certain games, or could go out wide for certain games, or do you need to spend a lot more money basically to bring new players in and sort of have that extra competition for the likes of Foden and Silva and Grealish?
Is your hunch, Si, you know, if, I mean, we'll get on to Paqueta just in a little bit, and obviously, you know, and Doku, but is your hunch that players like James McAtee and Oscar Bob, if these signings were to be moved on by Manchester City and they were able to, you know, recruit more bodies in that area, is your expectation that these players might be available for loan?
Yeah, I think with Palmer and McAtee, I mean, Guardiola's spoken about Palmer not quite as recently as McAtee, but I think for both of them, the situation is that Pep would like to keep them and keep them around to use at some points this season. They are both at the stage of their career where they would like to play more or have the guarantee of more minutes than they can get at City. And so, you know, if they can't get the assurances of as much game time at City, then they will look to move. And, you know, it's not ideal to move kind of after the season started, but they're kind of good enough players that they will back themselves to come in and make a difference where they go, because there is a hell of a lot of interest in both players. So yeah, it's if you had to sort of push me, I would think that maybe McAtee and Palmer would both go somewhere on loan, unless kind of crazy money came in for one of them. And maybe Bob would stay and be that figure where he doesn't get many games or appearances, but he kind of gets enough to be kind of more content than McAtee or Palmer would be with those minutes.
Yeah, almost like when Foden wasn't allowed to go out on loan, but he was almost that bench option, wasn't
he? Yeah. And like the role that Palmer has played for the last few seasons, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to another midfield man. Obviously, we're just speaking about Foden there. We've spoken about Kevin De Bruyne. Kovacic looks all right, doesn't
he? Yeah, he does. He's the sort of Gundogan replacement that isn't a Gundogan replacement, but may end up being the Gundogan replacement.
I think I just want to chop in before we listen to your explanation and extended analysis of Matteo Kovacic. I absolutely love him. I think he's so good. I've got I think he's just so classy, and he just fits so well into this City side. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to get that out there.
No, fine. No. He does have a lot of people who love him a lot, and you can see why when he plays. He does kind of he does remind you a bit of Modric with just the way he kind of glides across the pitch, and there's a few kind of like chipped balls in for teammates that Gundogan did a lot. There was one into Foden where he sort of took it on his heel and nearly scored a spectacular goal. So yeah, he's slotted in well, and I think he looks like one of those players that won't need any time really to adapt. Obviously, he'll get better over time in the system, but he's kind of intelligent enough and experienced enough as a footballer to know what what to do, and it was kind of telling that with De Bruyne injured, he was the one who was turned to sort of help City out, because they were in, by that stage of the game, Burnley were probably on top, so it wasn't like an easy Premier League debut for him with City.
It just feels like he can do quite a lot in the midfield. Like, he's a bit of an all-rounder, isn't he? And I think, like, even like you just saying with the Phil Foden interchange there, it's like him pushing forward, doing a nice little no-look pass to Phil Foden, looking for the 1-2 to maybe, I'm thinking ahead here, but maybe he could have slotted it in the corner. But it's just one of those things where it just feels like in that midfield he can do pretty much anything very well.
Yeah. I think he's shown he can offer things both in attack and defensively. He's very comfortable at coming to receive the ball off Ederson, and that takes a bit of the pressure off Rodri, because if anyone's man marking Rodri or double marking Rodri, then there's a space free for Kovacic to kind of hoover up and take two players out of the game. So yeah, he looks a very good addition, and he is someone who you'd certainly expect to see a lot more if De Bruyne is out for a while.
Yeah, and once again, you've done it again. What incredible intuition! But like you just said, the Kovacic role, almost splitting the centre backs, going and receiving the ball off Ederson and playing out that way. It feels like in certain games, teams try to almost pinpoint Rodri as that conductor, really, of what goes on with Man City. But you feel, like you just illustrated there, that Kovacic takes that burden a little bit off Rodri. And then, as we saw the other night, you see Rodri just being able to dictate and just shine again, really.
Yeah, Rodri's game kind of really interested me. He sort of did a bit of everything, but he popped up a lot more in attacking positions than I maybe thought he would. And kind of looked like he has that a bit more of a desire for goal. So it'll be interesting to see if he can score a few more this season. Already a goal and an assist for the campaign. That's not bad. But yeah, I mean, Burnley kind of pressed. Burnley man-marked, so Rodri was always kind of marked but not overloaded. But that kind of freed up Ederson. And when you've got Ederson
to play centre back,
yeah, and just like some of the balls Ederson was playing over the top, you were just like, this guy is ridiculous.
He could play centre midfield, couldn't he? He definitely could play centre midfield.
He could, yeah. And I've spoken to like Premier League coaches at other Premier League clubs who said, yeah, they genuinely rate him as one of the better midfielders in the league. And they really have to, like, when they plan to play Man City, they sort of have had to come up with new plans because of Ederson, basically, because you can no longer just kind of say, we've marked the outfielders, that's our job done. So, Ederson showed again at Burnley why he is such a big asset. But Kovacic has really kind of come in and done what Calvin Phillips didn't, and still hasn't at City, which is just kind of look very comfortable in the team and be able to get yourself into those positions that you need to be in that midfield, both kind of with facing goal or with your back to goal. So in that respect, kind of it already looks a good signing from City.
Yeah, I just see, I don't know. Like, I know he wants to stay. I get it. I completely understand why he wants to stay, but I just can't see how this works. And that may sound really negative and pessimistic, but if City are to make a buck on it at some point, that would be massively advantageous. And I think right now Phillips' stock is still relatively high. If he goes through another season where it's bench option, maybe that value will go down. And you just think right now, especially if, and we'll get onto Paqueta in a little bit, but especially if that is going to be another addition. You saw Kovacic on Friday night and how he just fit so seamlessly. You're thinking with Calvin, it feels like it's not going to be a good ending for him at City, does it?
No, and even more so than Kovacic coming on for him, like coming on for De Bruyne, but McAtee coming on at the end. Ahead of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Phillips does move on, maybe on loan, but by the end of the window, because if he's got to sit through another 4 or 5 games where sort of he's people who were behind him in the pecking order or who weren't even in the squad last year are coming on ahead of him, Because again, this should be a really big opportunity for him if there's an opening in midfield, but it doesn't feel like he's, quite ready to take it, and maybe kind of needs another challenge just to sort of remind himself of how good he is, because it's been quite a big kind of fall from winning England's best player over the year to sort of not starting any games for City. So yeah,
I guess it just shows the standard, doesn't it, Si? Like when you're looking at City, just those levels, like even when we're referring to England, you're looking at that City level and it's just on a completely different stratosphere, it feels.
Yeah, it's also just kind of the fit of a club, and how those positions are. I mean, Leeds in a sense play, or under Bielsa played somewhat like City, but certainly kind of as they moved away from Bielsa, and that, I think it was right. They kind of took less and less possession over time, and maybe Phillips is better out of possession than in a team that's kind of dominating the ball always. I don't know, but it just feels like it's not clicked for him. And while he joins many other players in coming to City and thinking, wow, this is different, he's still waiting for that sort of to come to terms with that and to deal with it. And I'm not sure if he's not come to terms with it by the end of this transfer window, does he want another season of not playing?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. We'll wait and see what happens there. But moving on, Paqueta. I mean, it came out of nowhere. We spoke about it on the pod last week, and the money that was being discussed was crazy. It was just like, whoa, where has this come from? Jeremy Doku as well, fantastic Belgian winger, very quick, nippy, would fit in and maybe would be that Mahrez replacement. What can you tell us about those two transfers, Si? Is it progressing? Is it baloney? What is it?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's firm interest from City in both, and there's firm interest from the players in moving to City, as you would expect. I think it would be the case of one rather than the other. I don't think they'd get both of them in. But also, you've kind of got the managers of both players kind of openly talking about the deals in press conferences, and David Moyes saying we've had a bid from City, but it's nowhere near what we'd expect. And with Doku, it's like, oh well, it would take a big offer to get rid of to lose him, but sometimes you can't. You've essentially got two clubs saying to City, come and pay us a lot of money for this player, and Moyes' words in relation to Paqueta are very different to Declan Rice, where he was sort of like, oh well, I just get the news from you, you tell me what's going on. And there wasn't he wasn't being as transparent then with Rice as he's now being, which always makes you wonder how well negotiations are actually going, because if they were going sort of as smoothly as some people are saying, there'd kind of be no need for Moyes to go public about it and say these things. So there have been discussions about price tags. I'd still be surprised if City went as high as.
Yeah, it seems a lot, doesn't it? Seems a lot.
Yeah, if they neared on 100 or 90 for Paqueta, I think it would be. I wouldn't expect that. So maybe it accelerates after De Bruyne's injury, and they think it's worth paying the premium because De Bruyne is out and we need another experienced body, maybe. But as far as I know, we're kind of still at that point of two clubs open to a big sale, kind of touting their players about, and City have interest in both players, but whether they would be willing to meet the selling clubs and give them what they want. That they've not really got a reputation for doing that in the market.
Yeah, Jack Grealish aside, that's exactly what I was about to say. You sort of look at the price tag and you think it's not very Manchester City, that one.
Yeah, and Grealish was a release clause, so that was kind of a set amount. And, they would have gone high for Kane if he'd been available. So it's not like paying is the option, but we've kind of seen... I think City have to come to terms with whether they want to join in this summer window. There have been
the chaotic Lavia Caicedo market.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because City are very strict on their valuations and what they deem a player to be worth. Now, is a player worth more if those around him is going for more? Yeah, because City have seen with Bernardo Silva this summer, like they've looked at the fees for, say, Mason Mount and Declan Rice and thought, well, if they're going for that much, like, Bernardo Silva is not going to be sold cheaply. But on the flip side of that, Guardiola mentioned the other week, like, they're always quoted 10, 15 million more because everyone knows they've got loads of money. But do they budge on their valuations of what a player is worth because they recognise that the market is too high? Or do they say, just because the market's high, because other people are paying over the odds for players, do we join that, or do we stick by our guns and make do with what we do and ask Guardiola to prove why he's the best coach in the world again?
Yeah, you can't ever even see City going on the rationale of handing out 9-10 year contracts either. It feels like City do things in a very specific way.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. It's still not clear which way they want to go. I think because of those factors in the market that they're really not sure. I think it's safe to say these deals are not necessarily deals that they normally do, but kind of have to be considered in their situation.
I guess that's football, though, isn't it? At some points, I guess your hand is sometimes forced, isn't it, with stuff like this?
And it is. But also, it's kind of it's not the City way in that they normally like to identify their targets like months ahead of schedule and track them and get them done early in the summer. Whereas, I think last year they kind of had 4 to announce before the middle of July. Whereas now they're still working on kind of a big deal, because whichever one they sign, if they do sign one of them, it would be a big significant deal. It would be expected to come in and play in the first team immediately. So they're still going on it.
Right, guys. Well, we'll see you in Act 3. Make sure you stay with us. We're going to be talking score updates from last week. We're going to be speaking about the Super Cup and if Simon is excited for Athens. We'll catch you in a bit. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Got a few more bits left on the agenda. Score updates from last week, our score predictions. I did push you in the studio for a score prediction. You did get it wrong, but I also got it wrong as well. I predicted Burnley were going to score. But it sounds like on the...
What did I say?
You said 2-0.
Oh, so I was closer than you then, was I?
Well, I said 3-1, so I don't know who's closer. I guess so. I guess it's nip and tuck, isn't it?
Yeah,
we need a little league, don't we? A league, a 2-man league.
Yeah,
Get Dan involved. Dan involved for whenever he wants to come on the podcast, and we'll get a nice little league sorted. But yeah, 3-1 from myself too. So nobody won any sort of prizes last week, unfortunately. But it is what it is. We'll get you score predictions ahead of the game in Athens at the end of the pod. But Super Cup chat's a bit weird, isn't it, Si? How are you feeling about it? I don't know. It's just strange, isn't it? And you just kicked off the Premier League season. It's not the Champions League. It's the Super Cup. Are you excited about this? Are you excited for Athens? Going to the Saronic Gulf, Acropolis, and of course viewing Manchester City out there.
I mean, I'm not sure how much I will see of it beyond the stadium in Piraeus. It's very much two red-eye flights to get there, but we're not complaining.
No.
Yeah, it is. It is weird, and it is. It's a trophy that Guardiola will really want to win because it's a trophy that City have never had the opportunity to play for. And, they did want to win the Community Shield quite badly, or more so than in previous years. So they could say they'd won 6 in the calendar year, but they still have the opportunity to win 5 with the Club World Cup. And also, Guardiola will always be the guy who won the first Champions League with City. He would like to be the one who won the first Super Cup as well. So
only 5?
Only 5, yeah. So this is... it is a big game, but at the same time, they play Newcastle on Saturday night, and they've made no bones about the fact that they're pretty annoyed at having to turn around so quickly after Athens, especially because it's similar to Istanbul. It's 2 hours ahead, so they're going to be playing and awake well into Thursday morning, and then flying back some time and play Newcastle, who are one of the better teams in the league and didn't look too bad themselves at the weekend on Saturday night. So, it is a big opportunity for City, but at the same time, they won't want to sort of prioritise it to the cost of the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. Are you expecting, like you said, obviously Pep wants to win it, but on the premise of what you just said, would you expect Manchester City to rotate a little bit, or do you think it's going to be full strength?
I think it'll be a bit like the Community Shield. I think it will be a strong team, but there won't be kind of that all-out, a strong team with the hope that kind of the result is in their favour to the extent that they can take players off early. But, we saw against Arsenal, Haaland came off after an hour, even at 0-0. So, I think that is an example of a sacrifice that they might make for Newcastle, because it is an important game and a trophy at stake, but at the same time the Premier League remains kind of what they're all about.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to push you once again before we end the podcast, Si, for a cheeky score prediction. We'll go up to, obviously we're not going to do Newcastle yet, because we'll have a podcast in between the Sevilla and Newcastle game on Friday. But Si, if I'm going to push you for a score prediction.
Well, I'll go one bolder then and go 3-0.
Oh, well, no, this is going to be it every time. It's 3-0, 4-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I'm going to go with, because Sevilla are just so awkward in any European competition, aren't they? I'm going to go with I think they'll rotate a little bit, so I'm going to go with a 2-1, a scrappy 2-1 victory.
Right.
But we'll wait and see who comes out on top. One of us needs to get one score right, surely, this season. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Si, thank you so much for joining me. You can catch Si obviously out on the Manchester Evening News. I'm sure you're going to be doing loads of nice articles leading up to the game on Wednesday and post, of course. Make sure you tune into the Talking City podcast, everybody, every week. We're trying to get out 2 episodes a week. Make sure you're leaving a 5-star rating. If you want to watch this in living colour, quoting our co-host Dan Murphy, you can check us out on YouTube as well. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe. And guys, thanks for stopping by this Monday morning, and we will catch you in a bit. Cheers.